Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Valerie Fessler. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Annual Giving here at Penn College. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of introducing an alumnus of Penn College's predecessor institution, Williamsport Area Community College. Tom Beloga has gone on to do some pretty impressive things since he left the institution. He worked his way through college as an automotive technician and graduated from WACC in 1974. He has an associate's degree in automotive technology and then went on to earn a bachelor degree in mechanical design engineering from Penn State. For more than 3 decades, Tom served in leadership roles at well-known corporations such as Mack Truck, Mercedes-Benz, Britax Child Safety, and BMW of North America. He recently retired from BMW after serving concurrently as Vice President of U.S. Engineering, President of BMW Technology Corporation, and Vice President for Engineering, Quality and Safety. Tom is the primary inventor on 8 U.S. patents and has appeared on national television programs including 60 Minutes, 2020, and Dateline NBC. He and his wife, Gail, live not far outside of New York City. Tom has said that helping Penn College students would be a wonderful retirement gift. We agree, and we hope that when you leave Penn College and have successful careers of your own, you will consider Tom's time here as an inspiration and that you will come back and share your talent with us as well. Please join me in welcoming Tom Beloga on his first trip back to Williamsport since he graduated in 1974.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad so many of you saw my picture and write-up in the men's room and the ladies' room. That's just, I had to take a picture, and I will fondly send it to my kids. I have 4 kids. I don't know who's going to laugh more, my 2 sons or my 1 daughter. One of my daughters has 4 girls, 4 of our grandchildren, and she'll laugh a little bit, but I think my sons will probably laugh the most, get a real big kick out of seeing that picture. So thank you very much for coming. My interest today is to try to pass on to you some of the education I've encountered over the years, from when I was a student here to when I got jobs, to when I was hiring, to when I was a president of a company, to when I was running my own consulting company, to when I was vice president at BMW and so forth. I've lived for a year in Germany. I've had an extensive experience with Mercedes-Benz and BMW and Britax, a British company. Obviously, BMW and Mercedes are German companies. I've traveled throughout the world. I hope that what I can do, this is the gift that what I would relish the most in my retirement, is to be able to pass on some tips to you that you can use and avoid some pain and anguish and get you some success the easier way, hearing it from somebody that lived it, and hopefully to be able to give you some inside information, some insight into what an employer looks for, what a manager looks for, how an employee can realize success. Now, the tips I'm going to give you, you're the first ones to see them on paper. My kids have heard them and probably dismissed them to some extent, but you're going to see them first on paper. And my hope is that I can impress upon you, not like a sermon, not like a father, but as a friend, as a potential employer. I've lived it. I've been there. I personally have not been able to succeed by living through all of these tips, but the beauty of this opportunity is I can show you where I've made some mistakes and how you can avoid those mistakes. Okay, I have 2 tips there. You get 2 for 1. First tip, and I'll go through these, all 10 of these, and then go through individually in more detail. You are as good as any and better than most. You. Difference between a hobby and a career. What happens in the first 2 weeks on a job? Deliver 110% and then maybe 100%, and is it time to move on? You're paid only to solve problems. That's it. Always be fair, but expect unfairness. Trust but verify. Ask for the hardest jobs. Sounds crazy. What's not in your head must be in your legs. You're going to learn a little bit of German in this presentation. And lastly, you will change the world for better or worse. You will change the world. And it's up to you for better or worse. The first tip is advice I got from my father, John Beloga, and he always impressed. I heard it. I don't know if he told it to the other kids. I was one of 7 kids. You are as good as any and better than most. And that doesn't mean you should be arrogant. You need to be confident. And that advice applies to everyone in here and all your friends and relatives. You have to believe that you're as good as any so that you can have the confidence. As I said, not arrogance. This is not someone looking down at other people. It is confidence to be able to do what you don't think you can do. Don't be intimidated. If you're of the type that is not very outgoing, maybe you need to take a Dale Carnegie course. Remember that, Dale Carnegie course. I'm not getting any money out of it. I have not personally ever taken a Dale Carnegie course myself. My brother did, and he said it transformed his life. He's a partner with an accounting firm. There are some people that will benefit from it and need to do it. I have sent people that worked for me to the Dale Carnegie course, and they said it helped tremendously. Write it down. Remember it, the Dale Carnegie course. It costs some money. Try to get your employer to pay for it when you're employed, but it is a tremendous advantage to give you confidence, public speaking ability, and really to give you that optimism and that ability to say, I can do it. Imagine success. Think about what you believe is going to be your successful career, what's going to be a successful outcome. Imagine it in your head. Dream about it. Honestly, dream about what would make you feel successful and what would be successful in the next phase of your life. Imagine your dreams coming true. If you imagine it, it can happen. And you know, has anybody seen a radio wave in here? Have you ever seen the television waves going through the airway? You haven't seen it, right? But we know it's there, obviously. This wireless device sends a signal and magic things happen. So think about imagining success, the brain waves. This is not cryptic, this is not Twilight Zone stuff. This is, we can influence events by dreaming about them, by thinking about them, by wishing for them. Also works the other way. It can be negative. You have negative thoughts, guess what? You know, it's like the speeding tickets. People say that you get 1 speeding ticket, you're going to get 3. Well, don't wish for speeding tickets. Wish for positive things. Stage fright is something that the biggest stars talk about. Barbra Streisand and many of the big stars, it's incredibly interesting to find out that they perform in front of lots of people and they get stage fright. How do they overcome that? By digging deep down and saying, I can do it. I'm as good as any actress, singer, actor out here. So that's the part about you are as good as any and better than most. Really believe that. Think about it. Use it to build your confidence. What's the difference between a hobby and a career? A hobby you pay somebody for. Golf, hunting, fishing, whatever. Career is what someone pays you for. So when you're in the prospects of taking a job or going for more education or whatever the program you're in or whatever endeavor, it's important to know the difference, because a hobby is very rare to be turned into a career. Yeah, there's the Tiger Woods and there's the exception to the rule, and there are exceptions to the rule for every one of the tips that I'm giving here, but basically a hobby should not be considered a career. Well, I like history. I enjoy reading history. Well, will someone pay you for it? And that's not to denigrate any part of the educational system at all. It's for you to look deep down and to say, will someone pay me for that? Because after all, that's what a career means. That's what you pay your mortgage with, and you buy food and you buy your BMW cars. And you're all going to buy BMW cars, of course. That's what pays the bills. So recognize the difference. Also keep in mind, jobs are not as good or bad as we think they are. I was in a position where I was going to be given responsibility at Mercedes-Benz for, among other things, the paint on a car, the durability of the paint and so on and so forth. And there, back in those days, were lots of problems with paint, with spider webbing and etching and everything else. Technology's come a long way. And I thought, paint? Phew, horrible. What boring stuff. What just an awful assignment to be given that. But it turned out it was very interesting. And then to the contrary, there are other areas that I thought would be really exciting, and they were very boring, and I was not happy to have those assignments. The point is that the job you envision, whatever your academic program is, it will not be what you imagine it at this point. It will be better in a lot of cases and worse in a lot of cases, but it will be different. And you need to use that as a tool, use that to help yourself. When an opportunity comes about, you need to think of it as, gee, maybe it isn't so bad, or I really don't know enough about this occupation, and I'll try it. So really look deep down and realize that things are not what they always seem. The first 2 weeks on a job, maybe it's 3 weeks, maybe it's 4 weeks, that will define your reputation in that business, in that job. The first 2 weeks, believe me, the first 2 weeks are critical. And what you need to do is be on your best behavior from the start. Appearance is critical. Smile. Not all of us can easily smile. I particularly don't have ease smiling when I'm not happy, and I'm an engineer, I'm a boring guy, I'm a nerd, so I tend to be serious most of the time because my little brain is working on problems and technical things and whatever. But the first 2 weeks on the job, you have to train yourself. You have to promise me that your first 2 weeks you will smile a lot at everybody and try to be happy when you smile, and you will be on your best behavior. Appearance is critical. Actions are critical. Yes, attitude is critical. Whatever they ask you to do in your job, sure, I'll do it. Yes, that's what you need to respond to. Now, you have to be careful what you say you'll do, but that yes attitude, the yes attitude is critical for you to be viewed as a positive person. And going back to the tip, the first 2 weeks define your reputation. Think about it. When you meet somebody for the first time, when you interact with somebody, think about interacting with them for 2 weeks. You form an opinion. That's what happens on the job too. Use that first 2 weeks to establish your reputation as a hard worker, as a dedicated person, as a smart person, as a well-groomed person, as a person who uses proper English, who doesn't curse and swear, who doesn't do disgusting things, who is really a good employee. Use that 2 weeks. It is really important. My attitude always was, and it served me well, when you're doing a job, when you're hired in a certain position, give 110%. Give more than what would be considered 100%. Give more. Stay longer, work harder, do all of the things that give that 10% extra effort. And if you're giving that extra effort and you're in a position and you realize that it's just not working for whatever reason, or you want to go somewhere else, or you're disappointed or something like that, then back it off to only 100% and think about moving on. But the attitude you go into the job with needs to be, if you want to be successful, needs to be you're going to give 110%. And people will notice. People will expect a certain level of performance and you will exceed it. But don't damage your health or your family life. Don't work through weekends at the expense of your family life or your health. Do not damage health or family to arrive at this 110%. And of course, never lie, cheat, or steal. Never. I know sometimes you think, well, it's only a little fib or it's, don't do it. it will catch up with you. It really will catch up to you. There are ways that we can be found out if we lie or cheat or steal. There are ways of finding out that we don't even know about. And your reputation is damaged, or you could be in trouble legally or something like that. So always have that perspective. It's not worth it. Tell the truth. Don't take what it doesn't belong to you, even if it hurts. And then, as I said, when 110% is too much, maybe you need to move on. Maybe you need to think about that. But go into the job with the 110% attitude, and that will serve you well. The only reason a company pays employees is to solve problems. I was an employer, I was a manager, I was president of a company, I hired lots of people. And I can tell you, and I've given this tip to students up at MIT, I've given presentations to different universities, and I gave these graduate students this advice from a BMW executive to say, you're only paid to solve problems. That's the only thing an employer cares about. Think about any job on the planet. You're only solving problems. That's the only reason they give you money. If you're selling hamburgers at McDonald's, or you're the company's CEO, or you're producing parts in a production environment, or you're fixing cars, or you're painting cars, or you're taking care of patients, or you're whatever, there is a problem that you're there paid to solve. And get your mind set on that attitude. That will serve you very well in your career, and it will help you to go to the next level. Put yourself in the position of the company, of the institution, of the government, whatever. You are only there to solve problems. Otherwise, they can have a machine do it, or a monkey do it, or anybody. You are paid as a thinking person with a skill to solve problems. Keep your employer's needs in mind. Adapt and stand out. You may need to learn a foreign language. I had to learn German when I was 27 years old. It's not easy, especially somebody who's not really adept at foreign languages, like I don't think I am. I had to learn German. It wasn't a requirement, it was necessary for me to be able to function at the highest level in that particular German company. And it served me well because I got positions that they never give to Americans only because I could communicate in German. So it made the difference for me in a lot of respects. So think about what you can do to stand out in a positive way. Be a unique problem solver. Make your boss look good if possible. That sounds weird, it sounds patronizing, and it sounds like you're brown-nosing and all that other kind of stuff. Guess what? Bosses are human. Humans always appreciate positive things. Give compliments to your boss when you can give them legitimately. That's a nice shirt, or whatever, or that really turned out well with something. Bosses really appreciate positive things, and in their mind, you stand out as somebody. Now, as I said, you don't want to be patronizing, you don't want to be fake, but you want to find reasons to compliment, in particular the boss. This is a very important one, maybe one of the most important ones that you'll encounter. Always be fair, but expect unfairness. We always should be fair in our dealings. But we also know that if we went to Alaska this month, it would be cold. We know if we would go to this environment, it would be humid. We know, you know what to expect and you can adapt to it. Imagine if somebody said, you're going to Alaska, and you said, well, is the weather hot or cold? And the answer is, I don't know. And you went there. What a shock it would be. 40 below zero, 30 below zero, whatever. So the point of this tip is to give you an idea of what to expect so that you can adapt. Even if it hurts you, meaning even if it makes you uncomfortable or costs you more money or something, be fair, because that will be repaid. I promise you, fairness will be repaid. But there are lots of people out there who are not fair, and there are lots of circumstances of why they're not fair. So when you expect the unfairness, and you're able to handle it, it makes for less stress. And it isn't that we wish for unfairness. It isn't that we hope for unfairness. It's that it's like the red light. It's like paying taxes. You just have to deal with it. It is what it is, like they say, and you just have to learn to adapt. Apologize before it's needed. That goes along with this fairness aspect. If you think you might have wronged somebody or it's possible or whatever, apologize. Don't wait for it to be glaringly obvious that you should be apologizing. A good example, you're somewhere at an event and you bump into this 280-pound biker from Hell's Angels and he happens to bump into you, okay? What do? Do you yell at him, scowl at him, or do you say, oh, sorry? Sorry may save your life. So think about the apologize before it's necessary in terms of the biker. You want to save your life. You want to save your reputation. You want to do the right thing. Even though you may not necessarily be at fault, the biker bumped into you, but you say, oh, sorry, that's the right thing to do. So don't be afraid to do that. If you're a manager, this is super critical. But even in everyday life with colleagues, it's very important. Praise in public, correct in private. That will always be the best policy. No one wants to be criticized in front of other people. It's embarrassing, it hurts. Praise in front of as many people as possible. Oh, you did a great job, or I really liked something, and that goes a long way. And it's also with people at the highest levels. Trust me, presidents of companies, they appreciate recognition and praise as much as anybody. They're humans. Whether you're the chairman of General Motors or the chairman of BMW or the chairman of, or the Secretary of Transportation of the US, trust me, praise goes a long way. And they appreciate it and they will remember it and you will stand out. It really will serve you well. What are all those ants? All those ants, and this was used, directed at me in context of people saying things. All those ants means all those little things that accumulate. The whispers that Tom Beloga is lazy, or that he's buying parts with the company employee discount that he shouldn't be, or whatever it is. There are whispers. There's somebody that starts a rumor. Somebody says that. And it becomes a point where the HR department or a boss or somebody just feels all these ants, all these accusations. 99% of them could be nonsense. But when the accumulation of these ants builds up, people tend to believe them. Look at the newspapers where someone is accused of a crime. They put the accuser's name in, and everybody looks at it and says, oh, that rat, you know, or we jump to conclusions because we don't wait for the proof. And all these ants, we have to be aware of this in our career, that there will be things whispered about us that are unfair, untrue. Some might be a little bit true, get blown out of proportion. Be ready for these ants. Be ready to defend them. How can you defend them? You need to have a good reputation with your boss, a good rapport with your boss and others, and also the personnel department, the HR department, human resources. Have a good rapport so that they know you, that they say, Tom, this seems like nonsense, but you know, we had somebody complain about this on the 800 hotline, and they say, yeah, I'm buying parts for my son's car, or my daughter's car, and she doesn't have the same. So you need to have an explanation for these things, but the ants will build up to a point where certain people will start to believe it and not ask for an explanation. So keep your ears attuned to these ants, to these things that can be hurting your reputation. Perception is reality to many. This is a common phrase, perception is reality, and to many it really is. You have to use it to your advantage, but realize that it could be to your disadvantage. If the perception is that you are lazy, or that you are sloppy or uncouth, this could go in terms of something like Facebook. How many of you have a Facebook page that you'd be proud to have your parents read, to have your grandparents read, to have your employer read? Good, good, excellent. Your Facebook page may not be reflecting your values or what bad language you would be using. You wouldn't be using that language, certainly not in a public forum, but others are using it and it's on your page. Guess what? That's one of those ants. That's going to reflect badly on you. So if you have a Facebook page, there are two strategies. Make sure it's spotlessly clean and you're proud of it or not embarrassed by it. Or two, change it and don't have your correct last name associated with. Take up a pseudonym. Take up a name that your friends will identify you with, but employer searching for John Smith or Mary Smith won't find. Because believe me, employer HR departments are looking at those things. I never looked at any of those and couldn't be bothered with such nonsense. But there are HR departments that are using that to research prospective employees more than other things. They're not doing the traditional things and they're looking at Facebook pages. Or they're Googling everyone on the internet and certain embarrassing things might come up. So the point is, in this day and age, you have to be cognizant, you have to recognize the perception is reality. And even if you didn't say it and it's one of your friends or cousin or something like that, get rid of them, unfriend them. I've unfriended nephews who used bad language and you know, I just won't tolerate it. So keep that in mind. Social media right now is very, very important and you are held accountable for what's on your Facebook wall and what's on your page. Know when to keep your mouth shut. Let me give you some really strong advice in the working environment. Anything you tell anybody cannot be considered a secret. Don't expect it to be a secret. If you're thinking about changing jobs, if you're thinking about something else, and you don't want your employer to know about it, your boss to know about it, don't tell anybody at work. Tell your close family, but don't tell anybody else. Believe me, it will work its way around, and it won't be a positive thing for you. Keep your mouth shut when it concerns criticism of other people or something you don't like. Keep your mouth shut when it concerns politics or religion or very controversial things. It has no place in the work environment. The office politics will use it negatively against all of us. So knowing when to keep our mouth shut is very, very important, and that means most of the time. Keep your focus at work on the job. And all those little things, yeah, you have a friend and somebody at work is really, and you meet them after work and you talk about different things, not good. It will make its way back to the boss or to the individual being criticized. It will not be good. We all need to know when to keep our mouths shut. Success and or fame triggers jealousy. That hit home for me when I was interviewed by journalists on television, whatever, and it wasn't by my choice, believe me. That was not something I ever aspired to do, never volunteered to do. I was just selected and had to do the best job. Your name in the paper, your fame, your recognition at a high level will generate jealousy by others. It's not fair. It isn't necessarily deserved or wanted or appreciated, but it is. And so recognize that with your success, there will be the jealousy. You won't know about it necessarily. It'll be people you think are your friends and they'll be talking behind your back, complaining. I had some people complain about me that they're glad I was going to a different area because then I wasn't making them look bad because I was staying in work until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I had no intention of making them look bad by staying that long, but I just had to get the job done and that's what it took. But they resented it tremendously because they wanted to get home to their family and they thought I was making them look bad. So you have to learn how to manage that. You have to learn how to head that problem off if you can, and also learn how to handle it and deal with it and manage it. We've all had emotional reactions to different things, and we all have the interest in straightening out the record or defending ourselves or whatever in an emotional way, but in a very negative way, criticizing, complaining, threatening, all of those things. So my advice is, yes, write the emotional email when you're reacting to some situation. Write it. Don't put anything in the to or the CC. Leave that blank. Definitely leave that blank. You don't want to have a mistake where you click on it and it goes out. Leave that blank. You know who it's going to. Type that emotional email and get it out of your system. And then a day or two later, read it and get it out of your system even more. And then after a couple of days, delete it. Job done. You do not want to send that emotional email that is lashing out at the boss or colleagues or critical or whatever. Don't send an emotional email. Every communication that goes out, you should be happy if it's published on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You should not be embarrassed. That's the way, you've probably heard this before, but that's the attitude you need to have. But by all means, leave the to and the CC blank and write that emotional email and then delete it when you're satisfied that, okay, I said it, I got it out of my system, and it's gone, deleted. You'll be very happy not to have sent that email. Trust but verify. This was first used by Lenin, and Ronald Reagan liked this so much he used it in negotiations with Gorbachev over nuclear treaties and so forth. And Gorbachev, the story goes, got very annoyed with Reagan, and he said, every time we meet, you keep telling me that. And Reagan says, because I like it. And this is a really important tip for you to understand in your career. You will be exposed to claims and information and so forth that people will put forth as fact. And what we all need to do is we need to put forth that certain level of trust, but then in an appropriate way, we need to verify if in fact that is true. We will be burned by things like inadvertent mistakes. People don't intentionally give wrong information, but inadvertently they might. They insisted it was A plus B, and it actually is C plus D. And in their mind, they've always said C plus D, but it's an inadvertent mistake, so you need to verify. Sometimes people give us enough rope hoping we'll hang ourselves. They give wrong information hoping to cause problems. They're doing this intentionally to cause mischief. And there are a variety of reasons, and I think we're all mature enough to understand why it happens, but this will happen in your career. And you need to be careful and recognize it. Things change. Maybe what was true yesterday is not true today. So we have to be willing to understand that verification is critical depending on how important it is. But you also have to be discreet when you verify. You don't want to get information from the boss or a colleague or something and say, thanks, I'll check it out and make sure it's right, or what. You need to be careful. You don't want to embarrass them. You don't want to shove it in their face as though I don't believe you. You want to be in a position where you can carefully check out what they said. And in this day and age of the internet, it's phenomenal. A quick example of what does that mean. When I worked at Mack Trucks, it was my first job as an engineer. I had a job as, one of my projects was to find out why are the fire trucks coming off the assembly line crooked? Because as you can imagine, the purchasers of these $300,000 fire trucks didn't like them leaning. So my job was to find out why is this happening frequently to these fire trucks. So there was an area in this Mack Trucks Engineering Development Test Center. It was concrete, and it was pointed out to me when I had the grand tour, this is the dead level area, meaning it is technologically flat. You can use this for measurements, drive the truck on this concrete area and make measurements to the floor, and it is dead level. Special surveyors' transits were used, special corrections for the curvature of the earth, and all this good stuff was explained to me. And I was a young engineer, and I thought, oh, wow, this is amazing, this technology. And I had the job, and I would pull the fire truck onto that dead level area concrete, and together with the technician that was assigned to me, we were making measurements and making changes and investigating, and it wasn't working. I was getting strange numbers. Sometimes it was plus and sometimes minus. It just was chaotic with the measurements. And the technician finally told the supervisor, said, this idiot doesn't know what he's doing. He's having me take the engine out, put the engine in, take this out, put this in, and I'm fed up. I'm tired of him. He doesn't have a plan. He keeps getting these crazy numbers. And so the supervisor came to me and said, what's going on? I said, I don't know. I'm measuring and I'm getting different numbers. I pull the truck out, I drive around, I pull it back, and it gives different numbers. He said, maybe the dead level area isn't dead level. Aha. Never occurred to me, this young engineer, never occurred to me to question that, because he himself, the manager of this laboratory, had told me, dead level. That was the start of my trust but verify attitude. And it will serve you well as the other tips to be discreet and careful, but challenge discreetly what is held as fact, depending on how important it is. If you would like to be promoted, if you would like to improve your career, grow your career, don't push for it. Don't keep telling people you want to be promoted. Ask for the hardest jobs. That will put you in a promotional material position. Ask for the most difficult jobs, whatever they are. Now you have to be careful what you ask for. It will build character and confidence when you get these difficult jobs. Why would we do this? Well, because number one, success is not usually expected. The hardest job, sometimes somebody's tried that and they've given up and management thinks, well, it's just not going to happen. So the success is not necessarily expected. But if you achieve success, wow, that's really something. That's tremendous. And in this process of asking for the hardest jobs and in your career, it's important for you to recognize the difference between a process person and an innovator. And like all tips and general rules, there are exceptions. But what I've learned in my career is that there are process people who are really good at keeping things orderly and flowing in a process. But they are not the innovators, the think out of the box people. And the way I've found to determine the two is if you look at their desk or their workspace, if it's very neat and orderly, they're probably a process person. And if it's chaotic and if it's papers stacked and it's not they're probably an innovator. And you need to use that to your advantage and identify who we are. I'm an innovator for sure. I'm not a process person. I clean up my desk, but boy, I'll tell you, I have chaos sometimes with papers and it's not a good thing, but my brain is thinking about other things, problem solutions and innovation, and not about the correct process. And so in terms of the hardest jobs, identify what you're good at. Look at your own workspace, look at your own environment. Are you happiest with lists, checking off lists, and before you do something, you say, okay, start here and there and go to the next and the next. You're a process person, and that's fine. You need lots of process people. They're very good in manufacturing environments. They're very good in lots of environments to set things up and keep things running. But innovators have a completely different key role to play. And so identify inside yourself what you believe you are. Are you more process-oriented or innovation? And use that to your advantage. When a hard problem comes up, use that to your advantage. If there's something requiring innovation and you're a process person, look for something else. And it goes the other way as well. Okay, this is the time when you learn some German. Was man nicht im Kopf hat, muss man in den Beinen haben. That's one of the first German proverbs that I learned from a boss that told me that if it's not something you can remember, if it's not something you know, if it's not something that comes natural to you, whatever, you have to run after it. You have to use your legs to find it. That's basically like saying, if you don't know the answer, find it, get it. When the going gets tough, the tough get going is a similar thing, but I don't think there's something exactly, I looked and I couldn't find something in the English language that was expressing the sentiment. I looked at the translation of this on the internet and it's wrong. They give a completely wrong explanation of what that German proverb translates to. It's just flat wrong. And I know what it is from the German people that I've talked to, and it's, if you don't know it in your head, you gotta go after it. Find a way to dig it up, to research. So that's a really important factor that teaches us not to be intimidated, to research, ask, and listen. It's critically important. Obviously here in this environment, you want to do all of those things. This is a great educational opportunity, and you want to ask and listen. If you ever get discouraged that you're not the smartest person, you're not the valedictorian in your class, or you're not the level of IQ of Albert Einstein or whatever, you ever get discouraged that other people are smarter than you, do a search for College Dropouts Hall of Fame. And that's absolutely not to encourage people to drop out of college, particularly this wonderful institution that I'm so impressed with. What that College Dropout Hall of Fame will tell you, you'll see the names of people that have succeeded in spite of not having an education. And the message there, the lesson there, is that you should not give up. If you can't have a further education, make the best of what you got. And you'll see the names of these people, actors and actresses and so forth, who never finished high school or never went to college, and they're successful despite that. That is the exception, not the rule. Absolutely, an education is critically important, but if you don't have sufficient knowledge, if you don't have that expertise, if you're not at the level of IQ of Bill Gates or any of the other geniuses of our time, don't be discouraged, because you can be successful. Schooling makes one educated, but reading, experience, and thinking make one smart. Education is important, but you need to be thinking, and you need to be smart. And this is really, really good advice. When you graduate, you will be schooled, you will be educated, but you also need to be smart to solve problems, because there aren't answers at the back of the book in real world. There are no real right answers and wrong answers. There's just the answer that you came up with. And people have to judge you on that basis, and they will. And the last one, you will change the world for better or worse. Your contributions to society affect the world. Our job performance helps or hurts people. Whatever we do, people are affected. Think about it. Think about people you've interacted with. A server at the restaurant, a salesperson in a retail store, any career position, any position, it helps or hurts people. And we want to be on the side of helping. We want to change the world in a positive way. And as I've said throughout the day, seeing this wonderful institution, how impressed I am after coming back after all these years with the great opportunity all of you have. I kind of wish I was a student coming into it, but I don't know if I'm smart enough to be accepted into this program. It's really phenomenal. It's really exceptional. The opportunities you have, the facilities, the equipment, I am blown away. And I've been to Mercedes-Benz laboratories and BMW laboratories and Britax in the UK laboratory and all over the world, and you have a great opportunity here. You have wonderful facilities. I haven't seen all the facilities, but I'm sure they're equally good. You have great chance here, and use it to affect positive change. And then I'd like to finish with the idea that success is in our head. People from the outside can look at someone and say, wow, they're really successful, and then the poor soul commits suicide, or the poor soul takes drugs, or the poor soul does something that we would never imagine. Rock and roll successful people doing horrible things, ending their life, ending their career. That's because we are looking at them and assuming success from our perspective. But the bottom line is the success comes in your own mind. How much money did Mother Teresa have when she died? But I'm sure in her mind she knew she was successful because she was doing great things. There was recognition, and there's recognition for a lot of people, Bill Gates, but the people that achieve a lot of money and a lot of power sometimes can't reconcile with it. Their brain can't react to why someone's paying me all this money. Why is someone giving me all this money when all I'm doing is singing, all I'm doing is playing, and it's what I like to do, it's fun. And I have trouble accepting that because it's too much. It's out of proportion to my own mind. Remember that. That's a good lesson for all of us. You can be making a modest salary, you can be living in a modest house, you can have modest surroundings, but you can be successful because it's coming out of your head. So we all need to learn to accept what we have and make the best of it. And the tips that I've given you, especially about being fair and don't lie, cheat, or steal, and making sure that we make a positive difference, those are really the critical things that I think we all in our head will recognize in success. And with that, I would like to entertain questions. Thank you very much.
Was it challenging for you to advance your career after you got your associate's degree?
After I got my associate's degree, I went down to Harrisburg and I worked in a truck garage to earn money because I had to make a living. And the associate degree was a great step for me because I was able to have the education that the other technicians did not. I was working in a garage where they didn't know the theory of refrigeration, air conditioning. They didn't know about the electrical systems and Ohm's law and all those. They were just grease monkeys and technicians and repair guys. Very good, but not at that next level. And what the associate degree I got here enabled me to do was to go to the next level. I was able, for example, to solve a particular problem that comes to mind. When you go to this was a truck garage. When you go to a work environment, there's typically the old timer there. There's the person that everybody respects because they've accomplished and they know a lot of things, and maybe it's not right, maybe it is, but there are the people that others look up to. And in this particular garage, there was a guy called Mert who was well respected for his problem-solving ability, and he had a particular vehicle that had a problem that he couldn't solve. And he was talking about it, and I happened to be standing next to him when he was talking to somebody else. And I said, well, maybe it's this. And he looked at me and he said, son of a gun, that may be it. Let me check. And he went back and checked, and sure enough, and that was a relatively simple thing that was not ordinary, but my background here helped me to reason through and think of the things that were part of the design. And that's the advantage you have here, is you're given insight into the background behind a lot of things. You learn more than just how to dot the I's and cross the T's. So the associate degree program that I went through here enabled me to think through certain things. And then I got tremendous respect from Mert after that. I was his, and that translated into respect from the other guys and also jealousy, by the way. But it enabled me to take it to the next level. So what you're getting here is the hands-on experience, and you're also getting the ability to take it to the next level. You know, you are getting that education, and it's teaching you how to think. What I've told people over the years is, for example, a mechanical engineering degree, which is very difficult. It isn't that when you get out, you're going to be solving these equations for fluid flow and all this stuff. You're not going to be using those equations. But you are going to be going through a process to help you to think, to reason through. And that's why it's so valuable. That's why a lot of employers will say, only a bachelor's degree. In nursing these days, even if you've been a nurse for 25, 30 years, you need to get your bachelor's in nursing, because it proves that you're willing to stick it out. And that is a huge advantage of getting a degree, or even a certificate has. You've proven that you can tough it out. You have the guts, you have the persistence in order to tough it out and graduate. And that means something. Degree or no degree, guess what? Person with the degree gets the job. Happens over and over again. And there are certain jobs, field guy for car manufacturers, if you don't have a degree, a bachelor's degree, you don't make it past the first iteration. You don't make it past the first look at the resume. What bachelor's degree? No master's degree, sorry. Put it in the file. We have to keep it for 2 years by law, but never look at it. So it really gives you a leg up.
I was curious how long you waited, like, because you said you got your associate's degree and you worked at that truck company for a little bit. How long did you wait before you went back to school, and why'd you want to go back? Like, what were your initial, like, reasons?
I worked at the truck garage for almost 3 years, and I went back because a foreman made my life miserable, number one. It was part of this jealousy aspect of it, where if you can do things, there are people who will have it in for you, and I experienced that for the first time. That was one thing, and another thing is I'm too tall to stand underneath vehicles on lifts. I'm 6'6", so they don't make lifts for people like me. Working on like this it's not fun. And the other reason was my parents had told me and told all of us kids and said, try to get a job working with your head instead of your back, because after 20 years your back gets tired. And anybody that works in manual labor, you know, we have parents, friends, relatives, neighbors who are working blue-collar jobs, working hard jobs. It's really tough. And boy, you got to respect them for doing that job and bringing home the money to support their family, but it's not easy. You know, when you get older, it really, you're not, bones and muscles are not what they used to be. So that was I would say, probably the most overwhelming impetus for me to go back to. I knew how to fix the vehicles, and now what could I do to get in a position of influencing the design of the vehicles? And that was another thing. I have this illness inside me that I like challenges. That's why I have the tip in there about ask for the hardest jobs. It might be an illness, I don't know, to ask for the most difficult things, but it's a challenge that I always liked. And it really serves you well because, as I mentioned, it puts you in a position as promotional material. You know, you don't have to ask for promotion, they'll find you. Who is that guy that solved that thing with the such and such? Oh yeah, let's talk to him. You know, you'll be recognized for that. So that's something to think about. There's no cookie cutter answer as to when you should continue your education, but continuing education depends on what your aspirations are and also what you're doing. You know, the back aspect of it was one of my physical incentives. So, someone else had a question? Got a mic coming.
What was your biggest challenge in your career, and how did you overcome it?
My biggest challenge was managing people, and I don't know if I ever overcame that. Managing people is something that, you know, if you're a good engineer, if you're a good nurse, if you're a good teacher, if you know, whatever the occupation, very often you get put in a position to manage people. And they put you in that position to say, congratulations, you're the manager, and you say, uh-oh, I haven't had any management training, which is terrible. Which is a big mistake companies make. A lot of companies are fixing that and sending people through management training, but it's horrible, and a lot of people are thrust in that position. And the managing people is so difficult because people are unpredictable. You have to manage women different than you have to manage men. And I can tell you this secret. If you ever heard of the book, Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars, that's it. Read the book or get the main premise that you need to, and this, again, I'm making generalities here, but if you recognize it, it can help you. My wife is a little different because she's used to me by now, but typically with a man, if a man talks about a problem, you can talk it through and make recommendations. My problem is that I don't have this and I don't, well, you know, if you did this, if you did that, and they'll listen to and discuss different solutions, and then the guy goes away and he makes his own decision. Maybe he ignores all that, but he goes away and he's talked about it and he's got some ideas and everything's fine. the best scenario for women, and women, you can decide if this is accurate or not, is to, when a woman explains a problem, the best thing to do is to say, would you like me to suggest some things? And wait for their answer. If they say, well, you know, and they blah, 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 and they don't say yes, you've got your answer. Don't suggest anything, because it's only going to tick them off. And if they say, sure, and there are cases where they will genuinely want the recommendation. Sometimes it's just because you're the boss and they're afraid of saying no. Well, and then you give them recommendation. So, you know, and this is a generality, so it doesn't apply 100%. Very often, women employees will like to talk about the problem, and talking about it helps solve the problem. Men don't like to talk about the problem necessarily, but they want solutions. And this is not negative for either gender. This is just what I've experienced in this book. Read the book. It really makes a lot of sense. And you can't go wrong by asking somebody, would you like me to recommend solutions? You can't go wrong. It may not be necessary, but you know, it's one of those things. The HR perspective, the personnel perspective is very difficult. You have people that have outside influences. You have people that don't like you for some reason. And you have people that will spread rumors. You have people that you'll do I made available vaccines, or flu vaccines for everybody in the group, even if they were contract people. Typically, only employees are allowed to get vaccinated for free by the company against flu. And I told everybody and said, even if you're a contract employee, even if you're not an employee, take your $24 that you paid for it and bring it to my assistant, and she'll get reimbursement for you from the department. And you would think, well, that's not a bad thing, is it? What could be wrong with that? Well, some people took my memo to mean that everybody needs to get vaccinated, and they were insulted by it because they don't believe in them. They just don't believe in getting a vaccination for whatever reason. They were insulted that I would even suggest that you should think about this and check with your medical, and I put it very, very politely and professionally, but they were insulted and complained to HR about me. Who does he think he is? So the personnel aspect of it is very difficult, and that's the hardest part that I've ever encountered.
How would you best describe your experience living in Germany? Like, what kind of standards and customs did you have to adapt to?
Space. The Europeans don't keep a distance between people the way Western, or I shouldn't say Western way, Americans do. Americans will talk to you and keep a certain distance, and Europeans will stand very close to you. And that's one of the things that I had to get used to. Even at the bank, when you're doing your banking, people would stand right next to you at the counter. As you're doing your banking at the window, they would be standing right next to you, looking at all your business. And then as soon as you got the money and you were supposed to leave, they would almost push you out of the way in order to get there. It was semi-rude behavior in that respect. Same thing about in the supermarket. I would be getting pushed from the shopping carts and didn't really like that too much. The closeness of the whole European environment. I really liked the cleanliness. And I thought that, wow, these streets in Germany are spotless, and these people are so respectful, and they don't throw the trash. And then I found the secret. The cleaner, the street cleaner, comes at 3 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning and cleans up all the mess. That's why it looks so clean every day, because they clean it better. They clean it more often. That's part of the secret. The different way of life in the work environment. The Germans are extremely protective of their personal life and their vacations. They will take their vacations. They will go on a vacation for a month. The month of August, for example. In the US, working for German companies, I learned the hard way that I could not schedule a vacation in July or June because they would infringe on it. I need to fly to Sacramento or to Washington or something during my vacation. And so August was a sacred vacation time for the Germans, and they would leave at the end of, or at the beginning of August and come back the second week in September and think nothing of it. 5 weeks they'd be away. And you'd say, well, who's doing their job? And the answer is nobody. Because everybody else is away. So they're just, things like that. And you learn, you know, but when they're working, they're working. They're very efficient and very good at planning and persistent and orderly. They're very good at that. Innovation, not so good. Orderly, magnificent. So differences in culture in that respect. And of course, the language thing. One thing I could say is if you work for a company that has a different language and you learn that language and you make your best attempt to speak to them, they will respect you enormously. When I would go over to Germany and I would be speaking German and so forth, they all told me they appreciated it so much because then they didn't have the burden of having to think of how to say it in English. So they really appreciate it. So you've got like 10 gold stars right off the bat, even before you've conducted business. You know, they just appreciate you respecting their culture. It's respect. And so that's something to keep in mind.
At what point in your career did you feel that you were successful?
Good question. I don't think I ever. I think very early on, when I was able to solve problems, I thought I was successful. I was being paid to solve certain things, and I came up with innovative solutions, and I think at that point I believed I was successful. The success came from within me because I was able to do something good, contribute. And that was, I thought, wow, I'm actually an engineer. Gee, I can really solve problems. And before that, when I graduated from here in the interim, examples like I gave you, when I was able to solve difficult problems that others couldn't because I had this tremendous education here, this tremendous background, the balance between hands-on and in the classroom. And you know, that's a plug for this institution. That's what makes this institution unique, is the hands-on balance with the schoolroom, with the classroom. It's just, you have a great opportunity here. And that's not a paid commercial. That comes from my coming back here and seeing how wonderful it is still. So that's a good thing. I think that's when I believed I was successful, solving problems.
What kind of vehicle do you drive?
I have a BMW 5 Series 535. My son has a 2002 model year BMW 330. My wife drives a BMW. My daughter-in-law drives a BMW. I don't think she lets her husband drive it, my son too much. My other daughter drives, not a BMW. I have 4 kids and they don't all drive. Yeah. And I also have a Ford truck, an F-150 that I dearly love. But I do drive BMW cars and they are really, they spoil me tremendously and my wife because of the technology. And what I could say about higher technology vehicles is you really very often get what you pay for. There are some lower price vehicles that are good values, but boy, the features that are in premium vehicles, and that goes for Mercedes-Benz and Porsche and Lexus and so on. The technology is just phenomenal. The things that are in the car that just make it so wonderful. I also have 2 BMW motorcycles. So yes, thank you, thank you. The safest motorcycle in the world, I keep telling my wife. We all know how that goes. Yeah. Any other question? Here, a question? Yes.
Go ahead.
Did you have a mentor whenever you were going through your career path? If so, could you describe that experience? And are you a mentor now?
A mentor here at the school or through my career? Through my career. I would start out by saying I did have a good mentor here. Retired Colonel Ray Pickering was one of the instructors back then, and he was phenomenal. He was tremendous. Great guy, wonderful, really, really wonderful guy. And I looked up to him and I learned a lot from him. And he instilled in me strive for excellence. And that was a great, great position for an instructor to be in, to instill that. Through my career, have I had mentors? Sometimes, not intentionally. I never went to someone and asked them to be. I just tried to learn from everybody. And am I a mentor? I've tried to be to different people and help them. I've tried to be a mentor to ladies that have worked for me throughout my career, particularly at Britax, at Mercedes. I've tried to give them extra attention in a positive way because I know that they have more difficulties in the career and the business than maybe a man would have. They have obstacles, and I want to give them encouragement so that they stick to it. Because women have unique capabilities that a manager should recognize. Genders are different, just different. And what is best is to get, the best thing that can happen to a person is to be in the right occupation or be in the right job. The worst thing is to have a person in the wrong job. They're miserable, the company's miserable, you want to fire them and all this bad stuff, but maybe they're just in the wrong job. So if the person isn't lazy, maybe they're in the wrong job, and you need to find, it's the manager's responsibility to put them in a job they can excel at. And so that's, mentoring in terms of, I would look at the whole group and try to help as many people as possible get into the right job. And people who are cooperative and people who are friendly and people that I knew were really putting forth a good faith effort. I tried to give them encouragement and act as a mentor for them whenever I could and say, what about so-and-so, and how about for this job? And really tried to promote people that I knew their heart was in the right place and they were good people. And then there are people who are just lousy. And you just hope that they leave and go somewhere else, go to a different company. And they just are, they're smart maybe, but they're lazy or whatever, and they're just not going to work out. And you want them to go somewhere else, but that's not so easy sometimes. So, yes.
Was there a point in your career where you felt like it turned to a passion? Was there any moments where you really felt passionate about what you were doing?
I think when I was president of Britax Child Safety, I was very passionate about protecting children. It was more than a job. It chokes me up to think about it. When you see blood from a kid on a child seat that was in a crash, it's horrible. So I think that there was an emotional attachment to child safety seats, and maybe I'll go back and visit that again, that industry, because you've got children who are in a crash, and the parents did the right thing. They put them in a child safety seat and they buckled them up as best they could, and now it's only your product that stands between the child and serious injury or death. That's a sobering product. And one of the things, and this could lead into actually another suggestion for you, one of the things I instituted at Britax Child Safety was everybody that worked at that facility had to be drug tested. I was the first one who was drug tested, by the way, in that program. And I insisted that we didn't hire anybody unless they went through a drug test. And the drug test wasn't the urine test that only shows the last couple of weeks. It was the hair test. Take a hair sample, and the hair sample will detect illicit drugs that go back a year. So we really knew, and we would test for more things than even the operators of trains by the Department of Transportation. We looked for things. And the reason is because I told people, I said, you're building baby seats. Do you realize that you're putting this together and the only reason that this exists is like a parachute to save a life? Think about that to the assemblers and to the people in the company. You're making baby seats. So that was a passionate part of my life where I was really able to give my whole heart into it. And I believe I was able to instill into the workers in that plant the same passion for what they were doing. Most of them were women, and they had kids and so on and so. So that was, but the drug testing. So if anybody out here is thinking about getting hired and you're doing drugs, guess what? Not good for many reasons, but it also can prevent you from getting hired. And so they would say, well, what if the person's bald? You know, the personnel lady told me, she says, if they're not bald, I'm not getting hair from any, and then the nurse said, well, there's always the arm. You know, we can get it from, you know, shaving it off the arm and so forth. So then she was all right. She had horrible thoughts. I won't go into it. And so the point is your Facebook page and what you put into your system. Think about your career, really. Employers are thinking about that, especially when you're going for a critical position. They're really looking after that because it's not only product liability, it's lots of bad things. So, you know, if you're involved in some of that stuff, stop it. It's going to hurt you in more ways than one, and not getting hired for your dream job could be imminent. So think about that. It's very important.
My issue was that with going from a technical aspect to an engineer is something that I've considered for a long time. So going from a garage to a desk was probably the most difficult transition that I could think of. Was it at all difficult for you to go from a technical aspect to a corporate?
No, because I had bumped my head enough and burned myself and cut myself and got oil and antifreeze in my eyes and hurt my back and cut myself, as I said, and all those things. I had done that enough that I was ready to move on to the safety of a desk, so to speak. What you're talking about is, and this applies to all the careers and curriculums here, getting the hands-on experience really gives you a huge advantage over others that don't have that. Having this classroom and hands-on and having the experience that I had working on vehicles, I could speak with authority and experience about a lot of things that these guys, the other engineers, they had no clue. You know, I could use and say, well, why don't we do this and this and this, because I had seen it before. And they had never worked on a heavy-duty truck or worked on an MGA sports car or a Porsche or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and you know, they had no idea. But you know, what's out there is great experience. And so for your perspective, think about getting experience and getting sufficiently knowledgeable and capable and confident and successful with solving problems. Get to that point, and then decide, do I want to stay here or do I want to move on? Do I want to go for the next? It does get harder to go back to school the longer you wait. That's true, no doubt about it. If I could have gone for my bachelor's and my master's and my PhD right out, you know, and consecutively, that would have been the best thing. But you know, life doesn't allow that sometimes. And so do it as quickly as you can, but the experience that you gain with the hands-on is just invaluable. It really sets you apart.
How did you figure out what career path you wanted to follow?
Just happened. I don't think I'm not a process person, so I didn't map out my career path. It just happened. I thought I wanted to be a park ranger, wasn't accepted into the program, and then worked in a Chevy dealership and realized that I could tinker with things and fix them more often than not. And so I came here, and the rest you know, I worked in a truck garage and burned myself and hurt myself enough and got the motivation to go back to make a difference in another way. You know, we all make a difference in what we're doing, but when you're the president of a child safety seat company, you can change the whole industry. When you are a manager of safety engineering for Mercedes-Benz, when you're in a high position, you can make big changes, really big changes, if you're persistent and you're clever and you're honest and you work hard. So, you know, my career path was something that just happened. I didn't sit down and map it out and say, I'd love to be president of a company someday, but I did think that I would really like to make a difference in kids' lives and that kind of thing. So you take opportunities, and as I said, things aren't what you think they are. They're not as good or as bad. And that's something to keep in mind. Don't be afraid of a certain job because you think it might not be what you aspire to. Do your research, ask a lot of questions, investigate, but at some point your gut, you have to train your gut to make the right decisions. One thing I think I can tell you is when was I disappointed in myself? When I didn't follow my gut. When I didn't follow my gut, I hired people I shouldn't have hired. When I didn't follow my gut, I made decisions that I regretted. So train your gut to be a good indicator of what you believe in and what's right, and then follow it, because it usually will be the right thing. It's amazing how the human body works. I talked about the thing, dreaming for success. I never believed that me having dreams about being on 60 Minutes would lead to me being on 60 Minutes. Why would I be on 60 Minutes? This is stupid. But I had this dream. And then a couple years later, I was on 60 Minutes. And I thought, this is weird. I wasn't wishing for it. I was just, but your dreams and your aspirations of what you hope for, it can come true. And it's that thing with radio waves and the television waves. And I don't see them, but they influence things. They work. The physics works, and mental telepathy and all of that stuff. We all have experienced that. So use it in a positive way for your career, and be wishing and dreaming for good things. And if you aspire to be in a position of influence, that you can change the world, that you can change things for the better, and you're focusing on that. You don't have to send me an email and tell me it's true, but I know it's going to be true. It's going to be true. You will experience that and say, son of a gun, that tall, nerdy guy was right. He was right. He called it exactly right. And you can make a difference. There are things that you're driving in your car that I thought of, came out of my little brain. Every one of you, whatever car, ideas. And if you drive BMWs, there are more. And if you drive Mercedes, there are more. And things on television, the crash testing. You've probably seen Insurance Institute for Highway Safety crash testing on Dateline NBC or whatever, where they do offset crash testing. They don't do offset so much anymore, but that they did it because of me, because I convinced them. And I'm not saying that because so that you might think that, hey, that guy is successful because he convinced. I'm saying it because you have the opportunity to change the world. That's a stimulation for you, that you can make a positive difference in a lot of lives and a lot of people. You just have to want it. And with that,
well, I think, Tom, it's easy to say for all the folks here that you've made a positive difference today sharing this expertise, and thank you so much for taking the time.